Welcome to this deep dive.
Okay.
And today we're going to be talking about birth tourism in the U.S.
Yeah.
And we've got some articles here focusing on the legal and political challenges.
Okay.
And we even have a story of someone who's actually going through this.
Interesting.
So are you ready to jump in?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
This is an issue that really, I think, gets to the heart of some pretty fundamental questions.
Yeah.
About citizenship, immigration, how we interpret our own Constitution, all kinds of things.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's start with the basics. Birth tourism, I'm sure people have heard this phrase.
Right.
But it refers to people who are traveling to the U.S. to give birth.
Okay.
Specifically so that their child will gain automatic U.S. citizenship through the 14th Amendment.
Right now, this amendment's over 150 years old.
Wow.
It was adopted back in 1868.
Okay.
After the Civil War.
Got it.
And it was designed to guarantee citizenship for formerly enslaved people. It basically says if you're born on U.S. soil and subject to its jurisdiction. Right.
Meaning you're not like a foreign diplomat's child.
Right.
You're a citizen.
So this has been a cornerstone of U.S. law for a long time.
It has.
But then President Trump issues an executive order attempting to end birthright citizenship.
Okay.
So what are the implications of this?
So that's where things get tricky. Think of it this way.
Okay.
An executive order is like a presidential memo.
Okay.
It can't overrule something as powerful as a constitutional amendment. Imagine trying to erase something written in stone with a pencil.
Right.
It's just not going to work.
So in essence, President Trump tried to bypass the Constitution.
You could say that, and unsurprisingly, the legal challenges were immediate.
Okay.
And pretty strong.
And what do the courts have to say about that?
Well, Judge John Covener, a Reagan appointee, even called the order blatantly unconstitutional.
Wow, that's pretty strong.
Yeah.
So this executive order is basically dead in the water.
Pretty much. It's a clear reminder that birthright citizenship, as defined by the 14th Amendment,
deeply ingrained in U.S. law.
Right.
And is not easily undone.
Okay, so amidst all this legal back and forth, there's a human side to the story, too. Our sources introduce us to Iman, a 29-year-old woman who entered the U.S. on a tourist visa while heavily pregnant.
This is where we see how these kind of abstract legal debates have very real consequences for individuals.
Yeah.
And Iman's story, I think, is particularly compelling because she represents a lot of people who undertake this.
She's aware of the risks involved.
Yeah.
She could face travel bans if her intentions are discovered.
Right.
But she saved a significant amount of money so she doesn't have to rely on insurance.
Wow.
And she wants a better future for her child.
Okay.
How has the executive order impacted her?
So the executive order has thrown Iman into a state of immense anxiety. Imagine the uncertainty, not knowing if your child will even be considered a U.S. citizen.
Right.
Despite being born on U.S. soil. So her story, I think, really personalizes this debate and forces us to look beyond the legal arguments.
Absolutely. It's a stark reminder that this isn't just an abstract legal issue. This is about real people's lives and their futures.
Absolutely.
So what does the law actually say?
Well, we have some legal experts weighing in. Professor Stephen Yale-Lower, a retired immigration law professor at Cornell, basically says what we've already discussed. The executive order is likely unenforceable because of the 14th Amendment and existing federal law.
And during a press conference, New Jersey Attorney General Matthew Platkin reinforced that point, stating that the 14th Amendment and Supreme Court precedents are crystal clear on birthright citizenship.
Exactly. So, see, the 14th Amendment makes it very difficult to change birthright citizenship, even for a president.
So this particular executive order is likely a no-go.
Yeah.
But what other options could the Trump administration have to curb birth tourism?
Well, one strategy mentioned in our sources is tightening border and port controls. This could involve denying entry to pregnant women suspected of planning to give birth in the U.S.
That sounds like a logistical nightmare.
Yeah.
How do you even determine someone's intentions?
It would be very difficult, and that's where concerns about potential bias and discrimination come into play.
And our sources mentioned another tactic, refusing tourist visas to women perceived as likely to give birth in the U.S.
Yeah.
Again, how do you prove you're not going to give birth?
Exactly. And what about women who need to travel to the U.S. for legitimate medical reasons?
Yeah.
This approach could have serious consequences for them as well.
Right. It seems fraught with potential problems.
It does.
And then there's the idea of reinterpreting the 14th Amendment altogether. Could that be a viable option?
That's a pretty drastic approach.
Yeah.
And honestly, a whole other can of worms. Some within the Trump administration argue that undocumented immigrants shouldn't be entitled to constitutional rights at all, which would include birthright citizenship for their U.S.-born children.
Yeah. Right. But our sources, like California-based attorney Muzna Zaitouni, point out that this reinterpretation is highly unlikely to gain legal approval.
Right.
The 14th Amendment has consistently been interpreted to apply to everyone born on U.S. soil, regardless of their parents' immigration status.
Exactly. And attempting to change that interpretation could have far-reaching consequences, potentially impacting other constitutional rights that we take for granted.
So reinterpreting the 14th Amendment seems like a long shot.
It does.
Then you mentioned a State Department cable earlier.
Oh, yeah.
What's that all about?
This cable is fascinating. It instructs embassies to deny visas to suspected birth tourists.
So even if you have a legitimate reason to travel, like needing medical treatment, you could be denied entry simply because you're pregnant.
That's right. And consular officers are given a lot of discretion in this area. Which, again, raises concerns about potential bias and unfair denials. Even if you're seeking medical treatment, the assumption is that you're coming to the U.S. to give birth and secure citizenship for your child. It's a very tricky situation.
It certainly seems like the Trump administration is exploring every avenue to try to curb birth tourism.
They are.
But as we've seen, some of these approaches raise some serious legal and ethical questions.
Absolutely. And it's important to remember that these aren't just abstract policy debates. These actions have real-world consequences for individuals like Iman who are seeking a better future for their children.
Okay, so we've laid the groundwork, the 14th Amendment, the executive order, and some potential strategies that the administration might employ. Where do we go from here?
Well, for one, we need to consider the global context of birth tourism. It's not just an American phenomenon. People travel all over the world for similar reasons.
So it's like a global issue.
It is. Also, technology plays a huge role facilitating these connections and information. And of course, we can't forget the human side of this debate.
Absolutely.
There are real anxieties and uncertainties that many people are facing.
That's a great point. So it seems like this deep dive is just getting started.
It is.
There are so many layers to this issue. The legal battles, global perspectives, technological advancements, and the very real human stories.
Absolutely.
At the center of it all.
Yeah, unpacking all these different aspects, I think, will give you a much deeper understanding of this really complex and often misunderstood topic.
And then let's dive in.
You know, this whole debate really highlights how differently people view citizenship.
That's a good point.
What do you mean? On the one hand, you have this deeply ingrained belief in birthright citizenship in the U.S., this idea that simply being born on American soil automatically makes you an American. It's a powerful concept.
Right. It's almost like a core part of the American identity.
Exactly. But on the other hand, there are those who question whether this principle should apply to everyone, particularly the children of undocumented immigrants. They argue that it's unfair for people to cut in line, so to speak.
So it boils down to who gets to belong, who gets to be considered American.
Precisely. And these aren't easy questions to answer. They force us to confront these complex issues of identity, belonging, and the very definition of citizenship.
And these debates aren't happening in a vacuum. We're seeing a lot of anti-immigrant sentiment and political polarization these days.
Absolutely. The rhetoric surrounding immigration has become very heated, often fueled by misinformation and fear-mongering. It's easy to get swept up in the emotions, but it's crucial to take a step back and look at the facts and the potential consequences of any policy changes.
Iman's story is a powerful reminder that these aren't just abstract legal debates. There are real people whose lives are being impacted by these decisions.
Her anxiety and uncertainty speak volumes about the human cost of these policy changes. She's taking a huge risk, hoping for a better future for her child. And now she's caught in this legal limbo,
It's heartbreaking, and it really underscores the need for empathy and understanding in these discussions. We need to see the human faces behind these issues.
I couldn't agree more. We can't afford to dehumanize this issue. It's about real people, real families, and their dreams for a better future.
Okay, so we've talked about the 14th Amendment, President Trump's executive order, the potential strategies to curb birth tourism, and the human impact of these actions. But what about the bigger picture? What does this debate tell us about America today?
I think it reflects a deep-seated anxiety about demographic change and the shifting landscape of American identity.
So there's this fear that the traditional idea of what it means to be American is being threatened.
That's one way to look at it, and that fear is often exploited for political gain, fueling this divisive rhetoric and policies.
It seems like a dangerous game to play. Pitting groups against each other based on their ethnicity or immigration status only weakens society as a whole.
Exactly. We need to find ways to bridge these divides and foster a sense of shared identity and purpose.
That sounds great in theory, but how do we actually do that in our current political climate?
It's not easy, but I believe that most Americans, regardless of their political beliefs, value fairness and opportunity. Those shared values can be a starting point for finding common ground.
I hope you're right, but it's clear we have a lot of work to do to overcome the divisions in our society.
Indeed. And that work requires honest conversations, a willingness to listen to different perspectives, and a commitment to finding common ground.
Now, there's another aspect to this debate that we haven't touched on yet, the economic side. There's often this assumption that birth tourists are coming here to take advantage of our social safety net.
Right, there's this misconception that they're burdening our healthcare system and draining our resources.
But is there any truth to that? Is there evidence to support that claim?
Actually, studies have shown that the economic impact of birth tourism is relatively small, both positive and negative.
So it's not this drain on resources that some people make it out to be?
Not really. Of course, there are costs associated with any form of immigration, including birth tourism, but those costs are often offset by the economic contributions of immigrants and their families.
So immigrants contribute to the economy?
Absolutely. They often start businesses, create jobs, and pay taxes.
It sounds like the economic argument against birth tourism doesn't hold much weight then.
It's more nuanced than that.
Yeah.
There are definitely costs and benefits to consider, but it's crucial to base policy decisions on facts, not fear or prejudice.
That makes sense. We need to have these honest and informed discussions about the economic impact of immigration, and that includes birth tourism.
And we need to recognize that immigrants, regardless of their status, are an integral part of our society and our economy. They contribute to our culture, our workforce, and our communities in countless ways.
It's important to remember that America has always been a nation of immigrants. It's woven into the fabric of our history.
Exactly. Our history is a testament to the contributions of immigrants from all over the world. They've helped build this country, shape our identity, and enrich our lives.
We should be celebrating that heritage, not fearing it. So where do we go from here? What are some potential solutions to this complex issue?
Well, one approach is to focus on comprehensive immigration reform.
You mean addressing the root causes of undocumented immigration in the first place?
Exactly. We need to create a system that's fair, efficient, and humane. A system that allows people to come to this country legally and contribute to our society.
And a system that provides a pathway to citizenship for those who are already here.
Right, because building walls and demonizing immigrants is not a sustainable solution. It's counterproductive and harmful to our values as a nation.
It seems like we need to balance our commitment to human rights and compassion.
Absolutely, and that requires a nuanced approach that recognizes the complexities of this issue.
It's a tall order, but it's essential for the future of our country.
I agree. We need to move beyond political posturing and work together to find real solutions. Solutions that uphold our values, strengthen our economy, and ensure a brighter future for all Americans.
And that includes those who are born here, regardless of their parents' immigration status.
Of course, birthright citizenship is a fundamental principle of our democracy, and it's something we should cherish and protect.
Now let's talk about the media's role in shaping public opinion on this issue.
The media plays a critical role in framing the debate and influencing how people perceive birth tourism.
Unfortunately, a lot of the coverage seems sensationalized and biased.
You're right. Headlines screaming about anchor babies and birthright citizenship abuse don't help. They just inflame passions and reinforce negative stereotypes.
That kind of reporting does a disservice to the public. We need more balanced and nuanced reporting that presents the facts and explores the complexities of this issue.
Absolutely. We need reporting that humanizes the individuals and families involved, rather than reducing them to caricatures. And we need reporting that challenges the myths and misconceptions surrounding birth tourism.
Because the truth is, this is a much more complex issue than the media often portrays it.
Exactly. There are many legitimate reasons why people might choose to give birth in the United States: access to quality health care, wanting their children to have more opportunities, and a desire for a more stable political environment are just a few.
And those reasons should be acknowledged and respected, not dismissed or demonized.
I agree. We need to move beyond simplistic narratives and engage in a more thoughtful and informed discussion.
And that requires a media that is committed to accuracy, fairness, and balance.
Because the way we talk about birth tourism and immigration in general has real-world consequences. It shapes public policy, influences social attitudes, and affects the lives of millions of people.
So we need to demand better from our media and hold them accountable for responsible reporting.
Yes, because the stakes are too high to let misinformation and prejudice guide our decisions. We need to elevate the discourse and engage in a conversation that is grounded in facts, empathy, and a shared commitment to the common good.
Now let's shift gears and delve into the legal challenges surrounding birth tourism.
As we mentioned earlier, President Trump's executive order attempting to end birthright citizenship faced immediate legal challenges.
And a federal judge declared it blatantly unconstitutional, putting a halt to its implementation.
Which isn't surprising given the clear language of the 14th Amendment.
But the Trump administration wants to appeal the ruling, so this could turn into a lengthy legal battle.
And the outcome of that battle could have major implications for the future of birthright citizenship in the United States.
It sounds like a landmark case that legal experts are watching very closely.
It is. It could redefine what citizenship means and reshape American immigration law.
So what are the main legal arguments in this case?
The central question is whether the 14th Amendment's guarantee of birthright citizenship applies to children of undocumented immigrants.
The Trump administration claims it doesn't, saying the amendment wasn't intended to cover those situations.
But legal experts and historians widely disagree. They point to the amendment's straightforward language and the historical context in which it was written.
You're referring to the fact that the 14th Amendment was adopted after the Civil War to guarantee citizenship for formerly enslaved people.
Precisely. And the framers of the amendment intentionally used broad language to ensure that everyone born in the United States, regardless of their parents' status, would be considered citizens.
So it seems like the historical evidence supports the traditional interpretation of birthright citizenship.
It does, and the Supreme Court has consistently affirmed this interpretation in previous rulings.
So the legal precedent is on the side of those who support birthright citizenship.
Yes, but the Trump administration hopes to convince the courts to overturn those precedents and reinterpret the 14th Amendment.
That would be a huge shift from established legal norms.
It would be, and it would have profound consequences for the future of our country. It would undermine a fundamental principle of our democracy and create a class of people who are born in the United States but are denied the rights and privileges of citizenship.
It sounds like a betrayal of our values as a nation.
It would be, and it could set a dangerous precedent for the erosion of other constitutional rights.
What can ordinary citizens do to protect birthright citizenship and support those affected by this debate?
First and foremost, stay informed and engaged. Read about the issue, follow the legal developments, and talk to your friends and family about it.
So educate ourselves and others about birthright citizenship.
Exactly, and speak out against any attempts to undermine it. Contact your elected officials and let them know that you support a fair and just immigration system that upholds the Constitution.
And support organizations working to protect the rights of immigrants and their families.
Yes, there are many groups doing incredible work on the ground, providing legal assistance, advocating for policy changes, and offering support to those in need. And don't be afraid to challenge those who spread misinformation or perpetuate harmful stereotypes.
We need to stand up for what's right and speak out against bigotry and intolerance. This isn't just about legal arguments or policy debates. It's about human rights, human dignity, and the fundamental right to belong.
Well said. We must never lose sight of that.
Okay, so far we've mainly focused on the situation in the U.S., but what about the global context of birth tourism?
That's a great point. This isn't just an American phenomenon. Birth tourism is a global trend with people traveling to various countries to give birth and secure citizenship for their children.
What are some of the reasons people do this?
The motivations are often similar to what we've discussed: access to better health care, educational opportunities for their children, and a more stable political environment.
Do other countries have laws against it?
The legal frameworks and social attitudes surrounding birth tourism vary widely from country to country. Some countries have strict laws against it, while others are more permissive. Some countries have even changed their constitutions to restrict birthright citizenship.
So it's a complex issue playing out on a global stage.
It is. And it's important to understand the different perspectives and approaches around the world. The debate over birth tourism isn't just about national sovereignty or immigration policy.
What else does it touch upon?
It's also about global interconnectedness and the challenges of managing human mobility in an increasingly interconnected world.
That's a really interesting point. I hadn't thought about it that way before.
It raises fundamental questions about the meaning of citizenship in a globalized era.
What kinds of questions?
Things like, who belongs where? What rights and responsibilities come with citizenship? And how do we balance the interests of individuals with the needs of nations?
Those are big questions with no easy answers.
Exactly. But they're questions we must grapple with as we navigate the changing landscape of our world.
Now I'm curious about the role of technology in all this. How has technology impacted birth tourism?
Technology has played a huge role in facilitating birth tourism. The internet and social media have made it easier than ever for people to connect with others who are interested in birth tourism.
You mean like online forums or websites dedicated to this topic?
Exactly. There are websites online with information, advice, and even package deals for expectant mothers looking to give birth abroad.
So it sounds like technology has made it easier to circumvent legal restrictions and access services that might otherwise be unavailable.
Yes, technology has both enabled and complicated the practice of birth tourism. It's made it more accessible while also raising new ethical and legal challenges.
And this trend is only going to continue as technology advances.
That's right, which means the debate over birth tourism is likely to become even more complex and contentious in the years to come.
So we need to be prepared for these evolving challenges.
Absolutely. And it underscores the need for thoughtful and informed discussions about the implications of technology for immigration policy and the future of citizenship.
Now, before we move on, I think it's important to acknowledge the emotional toll this debate takes on those who are caught in the crossfire. It's easy to forget that behind the legal arguments and political rhetoric are real people with real lives.
You're absolutely right. People like Imen who are facing uncertainty and anxiety about their future and the future of their children. The stress and fear this debate generates can be overwhelming.
It can have a lasting impact on families and communities.
It can. That's why it's crucial to approach this issue with empathy and understanding. We need to recognize the human cost of these debates and strive to find solutions that are humane and just.
And support those who are most vulnerable and affected by this issue. At the end of the day, this isn't just about politics or policy. It's about people, families, and the fundamental right to belong.
You've hit the nail on the head. We must never lose sight of that.
Okay. As we wrap up this part of the deep dive, let's take a moment to reflect on the key takeaways and the broader implications of this debate.
The debate over birth tourism is really a microcosm of the larger challenges facing our nation and the world.
What do you mean?
It forces us to confront fundamental questions about citizenship, immigration, and the meaning of belonging in an increasingly interconnected world. And it highlights the need for thoughtful and nuanced discussions that go beyond simplistic narratives and political posturing.
We need to have a dialogue grounded in facts, empathy, and a shared commitment to finding solutions that are fair, just, and humane.
Exactly. And we need to recognize that this isn't just an American issue. It's a global phenomenon that requires international cooperation and a shared understanding of the challenges and opportunities presented by human mobility.
So the debate over birth tourism is complex and multifaceted, but it's a debate we must have.
Absolutely. The stakes are too high to ignore. The future of our nation and the world depends on our ability to find common ground and create a more just and equitable society for all.
And that includes those who are born here regardless of their parents' immigration status.
Of course.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, we're all human beings deserving of dignity, respect, and the opportunity to pursue a better life.
And that's a goal worth striving for no matter where we come from or how we got here.
Well said. It's a vision that should unite us all.
And it's a vision that we must work towards together because the future depends on it.
I couldn't agree more.
We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive into birth tourism, haven't we? From legal challenges and global perspectives to the role of technology and the human impact of it all. But before we wrap up completely, I want to circle back to something you said earlier about the emotional toll this debate takes on those caught in the middle.
Yeah, it's easy to get lost in the legal arguments and policy discussions.
Right.
But we can't forget that real people are making life-altering decisions based on this issue.
People like Imen, who we met earlier. Imagine being in her shoes, traveling to a foreign country while pregnant.
Right.
Hoping to create a better future for her. And then suddenly the rules of the game change, and that future you envisioned is thrown into
The anxiety and uncertainty she must be feeling, I think are unimaginable.
Yeah.
And it's important to understand that decisions like hers aren't made lightly.
Right.
They involve careful planning, often significant financial investment, and a deep desire to provide the best possible opportunities for their families.
It's heartbreaking to think that those dreams could be shattered by policy changes that often seem driven more by political agendas than sound reasoning.
Yeah, it really emphasizes the need for immigration policies that are humane and compassionate policies that consider the complexities of individual circumstances and the very real human impact of these decisions.
Now, before we sign off, I want to leave our listeners with a final thought to ponder. We've talked a lot about the 14th Amendment and the attempts to reinterpret or even amend it. But what if that were to happen? What implications could that have for other constitutional rights and protections?
That's a critical question, and one that deserves serious consideration.
Yep.
The 14th Amendment is a cornerstone of American democracy.
Right.
It guarantees equal protection under the law and due process of law for everyone born or naturalized in the United States.
So it's not just about birthright citizenship.
Not at all. It protects a whole range of fundamental rights that we often take for granted.
Right.
If those rights are weakened or eroded for one group, it sets a dangerous precedent that could impact the rights of all Americans.
It's a bit like a domino effect.
Exactly. We need to be incredibly careful when it comes to tinkering with the Constitution.
Right.
Weakening one part could have unintended consequences for other parts.
Yeah.
And ultimately undermine the very foundations of our democracy.
It sounds like protecting the 14th Amendment isn't just about birthright citizenship. It's about safeguarding a whole range of rights and freedoms for all Americans.
Precisely. And it's a responsibility we all share.
Okay.
We need to be informed, engaged, and willing to speak up when those rights are threatened.
Well, that's a powerful message to end on. We've covered a lot of ground today exploring the complexities of birth tourism.
It's a multifaceted issue.
Yeah.
With no easy answers.
For sure.
But by understanding the different perspectives, the legal battles, the global context, and most importantly, the human stories at its heart, we can start to have more informed and nuanced discussions about birth tourism and its implications for our future.
I think that's the key takeaway here. Birth tourism isn't a black and white issue. It's a complex tapestry woven with legal, political, social, and emotional threads. And as we've seen, it's a topic that sparks intense debate and raises fundamental questions about citizenship, belonging, and the very fabric of our nation.
And these are questions that we as a society need to keep grappling with. There's no easy fix, no magic solution. But by engaging in open and honest dialogue, by listening to different viewpoints, and by approaching the issue with empathy and understanding, we can hopefully find a path forward that upholds our values and creates a more just and equitable future for everyone.
That's a great note to end on. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive.
It was my pleasure.
We hope this conversation has challenged your assumptions, expanded your understanding of birth tourism, and perhaps even sparked some new questions. As always, we encourage you to continue exploring this complex and evolving issue. Until next time, keep diving deep.